You ever meet someone who's just allergic to other people being happy? Like, no matter what you do, they'll find a reason to complain. Yeah, that was my neighbor Greg. And this, my friends, is the story of how I turned that man's perfect picture book lawn into a muddy, slushy swamp and somehow became the local hero in the process. Before we start, do me a quick favor. If you love a good revenge story, hit that subscribe button and buckle up, because this one gets wild. When I bought my house a few years ago, it came with this small, scruffy patch of dirt in the backyard. Nothing special, just a rectangle of soil with some weeds, a couple of old stepping stones, and a half-broken bird bath. But to me, that little patch was potential. After years of apartment living, I finally had a place to call my own, somewhere I could dig my hands into the earth. So I went all in. I spent weekends planting flowers, setting up wooden planters, growing tomatoes, basil, sunflowers, stuff that made me smile. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive. Most of my neighbors seemed to love it. Old Mrs. Jenkins across the street said my garden reminded her of her childhood in Georgia. People walking their dogs would stop and chat. It felt nice. Except for one person. Greg. Greg lived right next door, and if you pictured the word suburban perfectionist, his face would pop up next to it. The guy's lawn looked like something out of a Gulf commercial. Perfect stripes, no weeds, no leaves, like he vacuumed it every morning. He even polished his garden gnomes, for crying out loud. At first, I thought he was just really proud of his place. Cool, respect. But then he started making these little comments. "Hey," he'd say, standing by the fence with his arms crossed, "you ever think about trimming those vines back? Looks kind of wild." Or, "You should be careful with those flowers. Bees love those. Wouldn't want them getting too close to my yard." At first, I laughed it off. "Yeah, sure thing, Greg." But the comments didn't stop. They turned into lectures. "Your garden's messy. You're attracting pests. That mulch smells." I tried to keep the peace. I told him I'd tidy it up, maybe put in a border fence. But Greg wasn't after compromise. He wanted control. And then he went too far. One Saturday morning, I step outside with a cup of coffee, and my heart just drops. My garden was destroyed. Every single flower ripped up. My tomato plant snapped in half. The bird bath smashed into pieces. There were muddy boot prints everywhere, leading straight back towards Greg's yard. I just stood there, staring. You ever get so angry your hands shake? That was me. I knew it was him. No proof, no cameras. But come on, who else would hate my garden that much? I knocked on his door. "Greg, we need to talk." He opened it with that fake, tight smile. "Oh, hey, neighbor, something wrong?" I clenched my jaw. "You know damn well something's wrong. My garden's trashed, and the footprints—" "Footprints?" he interrupted, pretending to look surprised. "Man, I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe raccoons? Kids? You should really get a fence." That smirk, that smug, untouchable look on his face, it lit a fire inside me. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just nodded, turned around, and said, "Yeah, maybe I should." But in my head, I was already plotting something so beautifully evil, it made me smile before I even started. See, Greg's pride wasn't just his lawn, it was his identity. The guy treated that grass better than most people treat their children. So I thought, what if I took that away? I started researching. I wanted something sneaky, untraceable, and, most importantly, legal. And that's when I discovered water retention crystals. For those who don't know, these little things are used in gardening to help soil hold moisture. They're harmless until you use them on a large scale. When they get wet, they expand, like a lot. And wouldn't you know it, the forecast said heavy rain all week. Perfect. So, one night, maybe 1 a.m., I grabbed a bag full of those crystals and hopped the fence. My heart was pounding like I was in some spy movie. I felt ridiculous, but at the same time, it was thrilling. I sprinkled those crystals across every inch of Greg's lawn, like a farmer sowing chaos instead of seeds. Then I went back to bed, grinning like an idiot. The next morning it started raining, and it didn't stop. By day 2, the ground in Greg's yard looked a little soggy. By day 3, it was squishy. And by day 4, oh man, it was glorious. His perfect green paradise had turned into a swamp. Every step he took sunk inches into the muck. His lawnmower got stuck halfway through and wouldn't start again. Water pooled everywhere. The man looked like he was living next to a bog. I sat on my porch, sipping coffee, watching him try to shovel the water out, screaming into his phone about faulty drainage and city negligence. At one point, I swear he was yelling, "My lawn is ruined!" And I just whispered under my breath, "Yeah, I know the feeling, Greg." He had no idea what hit him, couldn't prove a thing. For weeks, his yard stayed that way. Muddy, soggy, depressing. Neighbors started whispering about it. "You see Greg's lawn? What happened?" And oh, how the mighty had fallen. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding my garden. This time it was even better. A few of my neighbors came over to help when they heard what had happened. Turns out Greg had rubbed everyone the wrong way. People brought plants, seeds, even a new bird bath. It wasn't just a garden anymore. It became a hangout spot. Kids stopped by to look at the butterflies. Folks would drop off home-baked cookies or iced tea. It felt like community. And that's the funny part. Greg tried to isolate me, make me the neighborhood eyesore, but his cruelty ended up bringing everyone closer. About a month later, I ran into him by the mailboxes. His yard still looked rough, patches of yellow, bits of mud, a ghost of its former glory. He gave me this forced smile. "Hey, nice garden. Looks like it's coming along." I smiled back. "Yeah, thanks. You know, gardening's unpredictable. You never know what's going to grow, or what's going to drown." He froze for a second. I just kept smiling. And I swear, I could see it in his eyes. The moment he realized. From that day on, Greg kept to himself. No more complaints, no snide remarks, just quiet nods whenever we crossed paths. Now, I'm not saying revenge is always the answer, but sometimes karma needs a little creative assistance. And if there's one thing I learned, it's this. Bullies hate losing control. They thrive on making others miserable, but when you flip the script, when you hit them where it hurts the most and do it smart, they crumble. These days, my garden is thriving. I've got tomatoes the size of baseballs, sunflowers taller than me, and every now and then I catch Greg peeking over the fence, staring in silence. Maybe he's jealous. Maybe he's just reminiscing about his lost kingdom. Either way, I'll take it. So yeah, that's the story of how one grumpy neighbor turned my little garden into a war zone, and how I turned his precious yard into a swampy mess. If you enjoyed that story, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more real-life tales of creative revenge. And remember, don't mess with someone who's got a shovel, a grudge, and a good sense of humor. Because sometimes the grass is really greener on the other side, especially when yours is underwater.